We're here with John Costigan at SEG Sales Summit, which I've been following John for years. He'll go through some of the amazing things he's doing with organizations and how he's doing it. However, John, first of all, just welcome to SEG Sales Summit, and thank you so much
Happy
for
to be here,
taking
man. Looking forward to it.
So, John, I've always thought, you're just extraordinary. I remember the first time I met you and you went through what you do and how you do it. I was like, what? How do you do that? Right. And I know you're going to have some stories behind that and you get the same reaction, from your audiences. But first, just to start off, what we have found during SEG Sales Summit, that every person who can do what you do and how you do it, there's always a story before that. There's a life-changing event that happened where you can kind of point to, look, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today or helping people the way that I do if I'd experienced some of this stuff before. Would you mind changing that life-changing event that you experienced in your life?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's such a broad question, but I think because I think we all have a lot of life-changing events, but I think probably if you were to pin really the most profound life-changing event I ever had was making, because it led to just so many more things, but it was walking on to Northern Illinois University and making that team. I played in high school. I was an okay player. I was recruited by some Division II and Division III teams, but nothing big. In Northern Illinois, even though they're a D1 program, it's not like going to Kentucky or Duke, but it's D1. And the cool part about it is if you win your conference championship, you're going to the dance. So, but the biggest life-changing event was that ever since I was a kid, when I remember my small town, like the movie Hoosiers, McHenry, Illinois, which ironically, like when you see the movie when you see the movie like Groundhog Day, everybody thinks that's filmed in Pennsylvania. Well, it's filmed in Woodstock, Illinois, which is like a bordering town. And when I grew up, I lived in Chicago until I was 9, and my dad died. And so my mom, we moved out and went to McHenry, Illinois, tiny town where if you see the movie Hoosiers, where they take the buses through cornfields to the next town, that's how I grew up. It was a small town, like 6,000 people. So one of our high school teams when I was in 6th grade went to this, they made it to like quarterfinals in state, which was really big for a tiny school like that. And I remember being on a bus in 6th grade when I went to Northern Illinois University. I'm a 6th grader watching this game, and they lost to Aurora, who ended up winning the whole thing. And ironically, the coach who was coaching that team, that coach ended up being my college basketball coach. Well, back then I'm in 6th grade, and I saw that. And to me, really one of the biggest life-changing events was going, oh my God, I want to be that. I want to have somebody yell my name and I want to run out on court. That would just be so unbelievable. So that really changed. That was the biggest life-changing event for me, was driving back home and just almost obsessed with, this is all I want to do with my life. And so that was probably the biggest life-changing event. But when I went to, I was never recruited by Northern. I went up there, I was a walk-on, and I'll never forget that, they had like 30 guys walking on for 2 spots. And after about the second or third day, every time I saw Coach McDougal go talk to somebody, the next day they weren't there. So it went from 30 people, it was funny. It kind of went from 30, then down to 15, then down to 7, then down to 4. And now it's Friday and they're keeping 2. And anytime I see him walking towards me, I'm heading into the bathroom, do not follow me, man. Well, next thing I know, he, and I think the biggest thing for me is because everybody thought when I was in high school, I'm not going to make it. And they had a right to believe that. I was 6'3", 170 pounds, scrawny kid. I was a good shooter, but that was about it. I wasn't strong. And when you go D1, it's a whole nother level, man. These guys are fast, strong, just good. And so I'll never forget that it came down to these 4 players, and coach just said, there'll be 2 names on the board outside. And I still have this paper to this day. And the next morning, it's 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm sitting outside the Chick Evans field house. And this really heavy guy, Coach Willie White, he's walking up, and his son ended up playing for the team as well. But he's walking up and he says, what's your name? And I'm like, John Costigan. And he looks at this yellow steno piece of paper with the green lines on it. And he looks and he shakes his head, and he just reaches out his hand. He goes, congratulations, you just made Northern Illinois University's men's basketball team. And I started crying. I was probably the highlight of my entire life, because my whole life, everyone said, you're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. And, you talk about life-changing events in business and stuff, but I don't think I ever would have had the courage um, to do all the things in my life if that one thing didn't happen. And if I didn't make the team, who knows? I would have done something else. But at the end of the day, that was the biggest thing. So it gave me confidence. It gave me courage. And I'll never forget calling my mom and crying. And all my buddies in high school, they're like, I cannot believe he just made this team. And our first couple of games, like DePaul, Wisconsin, Marquette. I mean, guys that, Ron Harper was at Miami of Ohio. Dan Marley was at Central Michigan. We played, there were some badass players in our, in our conference. And that to me was the biggest life-changing event. And that then led to me playing professionally in Europe. And then after getting hurt, coming back and then doing what every other ex-jock does, go be a sales guy. And that's how I started my sales career. But I really, the competitiveness and all the things I learned as an athlete, that definitely transferred into what I do in my business life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to think about making the team and then going to play professional basketball, right? So you talk
Yeah,
about you didn't just make the team. You're like, I got to evolve again. I'm sure all your goals changed, right? You're like, I made the
yeah.
team, but now I want to go play professional basketball. I'm a walk on, but I'm going to another level.
And
So,
that's what happened. From walking on to then now really getting my confidence up. I mean, from the first year, I'm just happy to be there. Second year, third year, now I'm feeling better. And I didn't even play my fourth year, except my third year, my confidence really grew. And I was playing a lot in the city too, downtown with really good players. And in Chicago, driving down there, next thing you know, I had somebody see me and said, "Hey, would you like to go to Europe? We need a shooting guard really bad." And my dream was always to get a check to put a ball in a hoop. I don't care if it was 5 cents. I mean, just to pay me to go. I'm like, where do I sign? And back then, I remember it was like I think I got like, God, it was like $35,000 or $40,000. But I also had I got paid by Puma, and I was there like when Boris Becker won Wimbledon. So it was funny. The papers kind of looked like we looked the same because he got his tennis rackets made out of the Puma factory in Salzburg, Austria. So, and that's the city I played for. But, that whole thing though, of going over there and being a big fish in a little pond, because, Europeans were just so great at soccer and we were, the United States was so great at basketball, but they're really good at fundamentals. And the strength of my game was just fundamentals, which really works into what I do for a living now. I can't stress how important, especially with what I do for a living, sales training. The fundamentals, and it's such a boring topic, Brian. It's boring. But I tell people, if you don't know the fundamentals of just, simple things like God gave us two ears, and one mouth for a reason, use them in proportion. Don't interrupt, listen. It's all the layup drills and the basic things you do that really make you great. And that's not the stuff you see on ESPN, but it's the stuff you got to do, or you never would get on ESPN because you got to have this first. And to me, it's really it's set the groundwork for my beliefs of everything from business to personal to to even raising my kids. It's about just the foundations of respect and manners and simple things like that. I kind of look at the world's not that complicated. If you just kind of just do what's right and don't be an idiot, I think, and you work your butt off, you're gonna have a pretty good life. And don't give excuses. You mess up, you mess up. That's it. I messed up. Done. Next, move on. Like Lou Holtz, the speaker, he actually had a great line. He said, "The secret to happiness is having a short memory." I love that. You mess up, move on.
yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And then, we talk a lot at this summit about vulnerability. And I think, every extraordinary person that we've interviewed and the things that they're doing, there's this vulnerability part to them of almost like, let me tell you about vulnerability and some challenges I faced. And, it's just been refreshing to hear the stories from the great people at this summit. Could you share a little bit about vulnerability and something that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I think I want to make sure that, obviously what I'm answering isn't just all about business and I know that's not the
Yeah.
intention of this. It's really, I think for me personally, I apply a lot of vulnerability to my personal life and my business life. I mean, I'm, from growing up with one of six kids and losing my dad on Mother's Day, 1972. It's pretty ironic that, at one time, all six of us all owned our own company. Because we all had to be pretty And I mean, when dad died for me, I mean, I was up getting myself ready to go to third grade, second or third grade on my own. Even though I'm number 5 in the food chain, we were all pretty independent. But I think for me, the older I got, there's a couple things that I like. I mean, I just had this conversation, Brian. I just had it an hour ago with one of the folks on my staff, and I said
Mhm.
there's an essence to being vulnerable, which is it's a good thing. When you ask for help, I said sometimes I run into, and this was my Achilles heel as well, is that I think a lot of us go, I got this. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. And I think to me, the biggest moment that I realized in my life was the day you realize you don't know everything. It's a pretty good day. And the day you bury your
Mhm.
ego, because you can start destroying relationships through ego, through I'll do it myself, because now you're not trusting people. And so I just had that conversation with one of my staff saying, hey, I told her, I said, the best part of my day today, the best part would be if you call up the company we partner with marketing and you just say, I'm lost, I need some help. I said, you referenced you're working from 8 to 8 every day. I go, I like you. You're a great lady and you're talented. I don't want to lose you because you're burning yourself out for 8, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Just hang up the phone, call for help. I said, because over and above you working too hard, I'm going to lose you. And it's hard to find good people and you're good people. So I think, but the other part of vulnerability was for me, probably one of the biggest moments in my life was that, to be really honest, is I took a client to, when I became a salesperson, I just really thought, just get someone to like you. If they like you enough, they'll
Yeah.
buy from you. And obviously there's an
Mhm.
old adage, I just tell people can like you, people can like you. That doesn't mean they got to buy from you. And I remember when I went to work for Comdisco in Chicago, they moved me to Atlanta and said, you run the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. And I remember taking out one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, which was here. I don't have any problem saying it was Glaxo Wellcome. Actually, they just merged with Burroughs Wellcome to become Glaxo Wellcome. Now they're GlaxoSmithKline. Well, I was whining and dining this person over and over, and I took him to the Masters. I spent $6,000 on the house, the car, the limo, the maid, the chef, all of it. Took him to the Masters, did all of it, and I knew there's a big deal coming up, this big mainframe. And Comdisco, we financed high-end technology, raised floor, mainframe, storage, disk, tape, all the stuff you'd see like in a movie of a big data center. And
Mhm.
uh, I put it, and meanwhile, I'm playing golf with this guy down at Pinehurst. We're doing all this stuff, Brian. And I take him to the Masters. We come back, and I know there's this bid coming up, and he sends me the bid, and my brain's really saying like, there's just no way I'm going to lose this. Man, I just took the guy to the
Mhm.
freaking Masters, man. It's the toughest ticket in sports. It was awesome. And a couple days later, he says, "Hey, John, we're going to go with somebody else." And I'll never forget. I was in Atlanta, in my office in Atlanta, and I lost it. I flipped out. I mean, if I did that today, I'd get arrested. I went. I was like, well, first I was like, no, we're doing this deal, and he's like, no, we're not. I'm like, listen, if you don't do this blanking deal, I'm getting in my car, going to the airport, flying there. I'm gonna take my car, put it through your living room until you sign this thing. And he was like, who the heck do you think you're talking to? And I'm like, who the heck do you think you're talking? And we got these two people yelling at each other. Now, by the way, completely unprofessional. And obviously,
Yeah.
we had spent a lot of time together between 19th holes and cocktails and the match. So we're borderline friends now. I mean, I would never do this to a prospect, and I wouldn't do it to him now because I was just so young and stupid.
Yeah.
So we're yelling at each other, and finally, me being vulnerable. This is the first time I was really vulnerable. I said to him, "I go, why the heck do you think I took you to the Masters anyway?" And it was
Oh.
completely silent. And he just goes, I mean, it was like 3 seconds, felt like 3 hours. He just goes, I don't know. Why did you? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. And we started yelling back and forth at each other. And I just slammed the phone down so hard. It's a black Nortel phone sat on an angle. And I just crushed it so hard that the phone went in my hand. I pulled it out and blood shooting out. I pulled the phone out of the wall and I just whipped it as hard as I can. And all our offices were like plexiglass. So you could see the other offices. And my boss is office one. I was office two. And he's going, oh my God. And this phone just goes whipping off the wall. He thought it was going to go through the glass. And I just drive home. And meanwhile, at this point in time, I'm like in my first year at Comdisco, you're there, you make like 200,000 and 300,000. And I mean, life's going good. I'm in now to my third, fourth year and I am tanking. I'm like, what's going on? I can't close the deal. And they only give you a low salary, like $36,000. So meanwhile, I start buying, let's get another house. Let's get cars. Let's do this. Let's get country club memberships. Cause I'm like, I'll just keep making a lot more money. And I was
Yeah.
stupid. Next thing I wake up, I'm like 80 something thousand dollars on credit card debt. So the juice is like 2 G's a month almost. I'm paying all this juice
Yeah.
on interest. I haven't sold a thing, and I just lost this deal. This deal would have really helped me pay off a lot of that debt. And next thing I'm driving home, I'm bleeding all over myself. I get to my house and I just lower my basketball rim down to my driveway, and I'm just dunking as hard as I can. There's blood over my clothes. It's on the backboard. It's everywhere. And my neighbor pulls in next to me. And he was a really good buddy of mine. He was actually on the mini tours in golf, really calm demeanor, super guy. And he walks over and he sees this nutcase in the driveway, and he walks over and goes, what the hell are you doing? And I told him everything I just told you. And I'm waiting for a little love from my boy here. And he looks at me and goes, well, maybe you're not a good salesperson. And I'm like, oh, God, Larry, got some salt, just pour it in there. He's like, well, look what it's doing to you. And I went in the house, turned on the shower, and just sat there and cried for an hour. I mean, I cried. I mean, the water went cold after like 10 minutes, and I just sat there and bawled my eyes out. I got out, I got dressed. My wife walked in, and she's like, Jesus, I just ran into Larry. What the hell's, there's blood in the driveway, John. What the hell's going on? I told her the whole story, and I'll never forget that. She looked at me and she said, how many shots have you taken in your lifetime in basketball? I'm like, come on, Beth, what's your point? She's like, just tell me. I go, I don't know, Beth, 1,000,000, 2,000,000. And she's like, great. How many shots have you taken just training on how to be a great sales rep? And you know, my answer was 0. She goes,
Yeah.
why would you expect to be great when you don't even know what great salespeople do? And you obviously have learned people can like you. That doesn't mean they got to buy from you. That was one of the biggest moments, kind of like your question one. But I felt that I was
Yeah.
getting to a point of vulnerability where you got to admit to yourself, hey, man, quit making excuses. This is on you. You're responsible for your own life. And at that moment, I took 2 weeks off of work. I read every imaginable book there was on sales training, on sales, on all of it. You name it. I read Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. I mean, all of it. I said, get control of your life. I came back. And because I went to the coast, I'm like, I'm 80 grand in debt. If I go 90, who cares, man? Go big or go home. Like, what's 80 or 90? Either way, I'm in debt. And so I come back and I met that client again, called him up. He said, hey, we obviously got really nuts, John. I said, I'm sorry, you're sorry. It's kind of makeup session. I said, but I'm really sorry. And this is the vulnerable part. I said, I'm really sorry that I was spending money on you, trying to guilt you into buying. That was the most honest thing I said to him. I go, I am sorry I was guilting you, because I was. And he's like, you were? He goes, but then again, John, I never went to the Masters either. So I really wanted to go. I'm like, so we're both kind of guilty. He goes, well, I know you lost a $2 million deal. We have a $12 million deal on laptops. And I'll never forget this part as well. This is one of the best lessons I learned, Brian, in sales. When he said to me, hey, so why don't you fly up? Let's go through it. I said, hang on, let me ask you a question. If I fly up and we have a meeting, and from a 1 to a 10, if it's a 10, what happens next? And he goes, well, I don't know. I go, then why am I flying up? That was the first time. Most reps would go, great, hang up the phone, get on the flight, go, or say something screwed up. That was the first time in my life I said, start qualifying and it be instead of just running around. So I said, you just spent 2 weeks training on your own, learn your lesson. And I did that. Well, what happened is we spent another hour on the phone going through everything. I never went there. I never went to Raleigh. I went straight to Chicago. I worked out this deal with my own company. And before I flew to him, I said, if I do this, what happens next? He kept going, no, we'll give you the deal. We'll give you the deal. And I said, I'm not going to be the cheapest. That's another vulnerable part. I go, I won't be the cheapest. He's like, that's okay. I'm like, good. So they wanted to have, they want to have an operating lease. They wanted asset management. They wanted a quick ship program if they need to send something. So they did a complete solution. And I presented to him. I'll never forget this. I presented to him, Brian, and we're in the cafeteria. And he's like, how you doing? I go, how are you? And I gave him the proposal. He goes, I'll be right back. I'm in the cafeteria. And about 5 minutes later, he comes back and he goes, turn to the back page. I turned the back page and it was signed. He goes, congratulations. You just won your first deal at Glaxo. I was in the cafeteria. I jumped up and I was hugging him. I was crying. I mean, we cried a lot back then. Okay. And that's when I really felt the one thing I've learned, the more vulnerable you are, especially the more transparent you are and vulnerable, the more of it you get back, because we're just buying from human beings. Now, this doesn't mean to be transparent and vulnerable and talk about your specific issues and you tell a customer like, oh my God, if you don't buy, I'm going to get fired. No, that's a mercy sale now. But I mean, just the vulnerability of your weaknesses and your strengths. And the one thing I've learned is that I'm an idiot, man. I don't even know where I park my car. But there's one, to me, I told this to the lady today, my staff, I said, if you're great at one thing, if you get really great at one thing, then you don't care how crappy you are at all the other stuff. Just be great at one thing. If you feel you're that good at it, then you don't care if you suck it, because there's not enough hours in a day to be great at everything. So just be great at
Yeah.
one thing. And if you're great at one thing, you'll make a hell of a living.
Yeah. No, I love that story. Actually, Anthony Armando, who I think you know is my boss at ADP, who knows Don. They're really good friends, right? That
Okay.
introduced me to you. I'll never forget walking out of a meeting, very similar, but walking out of a meeting, Fortune 500 company, got done. He's like, so Brian, what'd you think? It was like one of my first calls with him at a national account deal that I was working. And I'm like, oh, it's great. They're going to buy from me. I'm great. Did you see that presentation? Did you see how I worked that room? And, just take my forecast and put it into the close stage. And I'll never forget, he didn't help me on this deal because he wanted me to learn. And he said, no, you're going to lose that deal. And I
Wow.
asked him, well, what do you mean? I'm great. I mean, did you see me in there? And he said, yeah, but did you notice that the person who makes the decision had his arms crossed the entire meeting and was
Wow.
sitting back in his chair and for 2 hours had never taken one note and was looking at you like, I cannot wait until this is over. I know there was 12 people in the room, Brian, but I think you got too big of an ego and you think you're a great salesperson and you don't even read your audience. You don't even ask questions. He goes,
Good lesson.
what I was watching, the Brian show, thought you were pretty good. You'll lose that deal. And, purposely, I was looking at him, why didn't you ask questions? Why didn't you? He's like, I just wanted you to learn. Pay attention to your audience. Ask good questions. To your point, talk 20% of the time, listen 80% of the time. He's like, you didn't even ask people throughout the entire presentation. What do you think? What questions do you have? What do you like? What do you dislike? And I remember that was the day, similar to your story, is like, I got to change right now. Of course, we lost the deal, right? He knew.
Wow.
So, but I love your story. I mean, you talk about vulnerability and, coaching, training. Now, it's interesting. Now you do it for other people, right? Like, I want to help you with some of the things that I struggled in. Now I want to help you, right? In coach and train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that one of the great things, I guess, about having a lot of scars in this business is, I think being vulnerable, transparent. Like one of the opening lines, even when I do training, one of my opening lines is, I always try to say what I think they're thinking right out of the gate, because a lot of people are skeptical. The only reason why they're in training half the time, if I'm training like an Oracle or Google or somebody, is because they got an email going, you got to be here. They're like, all right, I got to go through another training, and that's why I say, I go, you're probably here because you got an email. Number one. Number two, I know you're probably looking at me going, okay, if this guy's so great, why is he not working for Oracle or Google or SAP and making $1 million a year? Those who can do, like you guys, and those who can't teach. And they all laugh, and they laugh, and I do this almost every time, because when they're laughing and they're smiling, I think their brains are going, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like, I like this guy already. I'm starting to right at that moment, I'm making a connection and I'm building credibility, because I need to connect with my audience. I got to do that, but I got to build credibility. And the best way to build credibility is say what you think they're thinking. If you do, they're like, he's got me. At least the guy knows what I'm thinking. And that's a really big part of not just training, but sales. When you get into sales, a lot of times I'll walk into a room, and after you exchange pleasantries, I'll say, hey, based on your role as a CFO or based on your role as whatever, I'm assuming your top 2 or 3 priorities have nothing to do with me, but they probably have to do with the vision of the company. You're managing people, process, program, technology. Meanwhile, you've been funded on your 3rd round by the boom, and they're looking, going, wow, this guy is talking. I want to say my first opening lines, Brian, where they're looking around the room going, is there a camera in there? How does this guy know all this stuff? See, to me, it's not so much about knowing everything about your product. It's about knowing about the role that you're talking to and what they're thinking all day, because that gives you the credibility to now ask the questions. But if you walk in going, hi, how are you? Let me ask you some questions. My brain's going, you haven't earned the right to ask me that. That's why a lot of times when you cold call a prospect, hi, how are you? My name is so-and-so and so-and-so. Hey, let me ask you, what are you currently using with blank? I'm like, wait, you don't even know me yet, dude. I mean, why don't you just ask me my mother's maiden name, my credit card number while you're at it? I mean, it's just way too early. So that's a big part of that. And a big part is being vulnerable. And that's why when people ask me questions, if I don't know, I don't know. But I always go, why do you ask? That's a big part.
People they like honesty. That's what you're doing right off the get-go, where they immediately have a connection. I love that part. that you've put up there on that board. I just had a meeting with a past client that left us, and I wanted to blame it on the pandemic, right? Very easy to do. Well, the pandemic hit, so they had to cut budget. And they showed up to the call because I got wind they're looking at another company and they're going to sign a contract with them. So I show up and the lady says, and I asked her right away, so I understand you're looking at this other company. That's great. Would you mind explaining that more? And she said, the last time I don't think it worked out. I think you hired the wrong people, and I think your go-to-market strategy was wrong. And I think we should have done it differently. And she went on to explain it. And I got done. I said, you're completely right, man. We messed that up.
Mm-hmm.
We changed. Would you mind just listening to it a little bit more for companies like you in the ERP space? Our model that we're using now, and that should not change if you use the other company, right?
Yeah.
And we went through the whole model, which was honesty because we had to change since we had another account that was similar. And I'll never forget it. I mean, we're on the phone today with her boss, and they said, can you get us a quote? We need to move fast. But I think what so many salespeople do is when someone comes at them and says, well, you did this wrong or you did that, if it's a client, whatever it may be, our immediate reaction, just like children, is we defend ourselves. We talk back. We try to protect ourselves instead of, what, you're right.
These are usually the first 2 words. Yeah, but.
Yeah.
I taught that. I talk to my kids. I go, especially Jack. I go, Jack. Grace is Grace dances ballet out in L.A. Jack played basketball in college. He went on full ride to UNC Asheville, and then he wanted to be a big fish in a little pond. He went from there. Actually, he went to the first round of the NCAA tournament, but then he went to a D3 school. Wanted to finish up there. But I always told Jack, when you get yanked out of a game because you screwed up, I said, and you will, being an athlete, when you do it, when he starts grilling you, don't go, yeah, but. It's the quickest way for you to stay on the bench. It's almost like that. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Just don't say it. Just go. You're right, coach. That's it. Learn if you want to dispute it in practice the next day, but don't do it during the game because you're not getting back in. And that's a big that's a big thing. And that's why just what you said, Brian. That's it. It's where when someone says, "Hey, man, this is why we didn't go with you," you go, first off, thanks for telling me. Can you elaborate in terms of where you thought the gap was and how it affected your business and your customers? And it's a great thing when you're not defensive. It's almost like I tell people, let's pretend I gave you $10 million. I put it in your bank account and they go, we're not choosing you. You're probably like, okay, well, I really don't care. I got $10 million. Who cares? And if you kind of can, and the hard part is when you do that, you don't have 10 million. But if you can do that, and it allows you not to be defensive. And when someone says you messed up, you come from a position of understanding versus retaliation and ego. Mm-hmm. And what it really is, it's a combination of this. It's ego versus empathy. Because when somebody goes, you messed up, this is what usually shines. And I agree. I'd much rather do that. Be empathetic.
Yep.
They're telling you for a reason. And the problem is, Brian, also a lot of times they don't tell you. And then when they do tell you, it's an email.
Yep.
Thanks. So, hey, sorry. Good
well, you
today.
You sent them an email instead of calling them and asking, right? You sent them an email. So what's easier? Everyone likes to respond via email that, I'm not going to use you, or sorry, we decided. They love that. It's much harder. Let's just have a conversation. I want to know why.
Yep. Well, but Brian, I do know why people do email, what have you, because here, Brian, you just proved it. Ready? You just proved it. Here's why people don't want to be honest. I tell people, people lie to us all the time. Here's why. We forced it on them. We did this. We made them lie. Here's how we made them lie. When if a customer says, hey, we're not going to go with you, and you do this, if they go, hey, listen, we're going to go with somebody else, and you go, why? Right now, what did you just do? You put them on the defensive. They're now defensive.
Yep.
All right. And know what their brain's saying? Damn, here I was trying to be a nice guy or a nice lady, telling them we're not going to go with you. I was going to send an email, but I thought I'd just have a heart to heart with you and go, thanks for all your time and effort. Looks like we're going to go another road. And you're like, okay, well, why? What did we do wrong? And now they're like, okay. So now here's your customer. And we got this big shield up right now. They're like, okay, well, this is working out well. I decided to be honest, and this guy's making me feel like crap. You know what I'm learning? Don't tell the truth. It's like my son, Jack. I know I talk about Gracie and Jack all the time. I remember Jack broke something in the house because he was playing ball in the house. And I'm like, hey, Jack, And we knew what happened. So I went up there, I go, hey, bud. And he's standing there, I go, tell me what happened. I go, Jack, it's okay. Just tell me the truth. I remember there's no lying. We don't use the word hate in our house. I go, no lying, just tell the truth. He's like, all right, Dad, I did it. Now, when he says, what am I supposed to go? Jack, why'd you do that? You know what I just did?
Yeah.
My son, start lying, because when I tell the truth, Dad gets pissed. When I lie, I might be able to get away with it, and he's happy.
No.
See, and that's the same that happens with customers. We're not going to go with you. I
Mhm.
remember one of the deals I won at Wheels Corporation in Des Plaines, Illinois. It's right across the street from the first McDonald's in the world. It's right there. I think it's
Oh,
off a
yeah,
River
I
Road
live
in
on
Des Plaines.
yeah,
Okay, good. You know
yeah,
where it's at. So it's a museum, right? And I'll never forget
yeah.
that the guy. I'll never forget that they called me up because I was in Europe and I messed up. I didn't get back to them in time. I was in Europe with a client, and I got back and I got the message on my phone, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go with some." And I got the message. And John, could you call me? And I call her up. I'll never forget. It's Leslie. And I said, "Hey, Leslie." She goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know that we're going to go with another company." And I said, "I go, good for you guys." I go, good for you. I go, hey, she's like, she goes, you sound pretty happy. I go, well, I am. You know what? I'm happy because I'm glad that you're helping the industry of training. I'm glad you're not doing it internally based on our conversation. I think you referenced you probably needed some experts. You have great salespeople, but you said they weren't great trainers. So, hey, good for you. I'm glad you're using somebody. Do you mind if I ask who you're using? And she said, yeah. And she told me the company she was going with, a big firm. And I said, good for you. I said, hey, now that I know you're going with it and we're done, deal's over. I said, I really appreciate the phone call. I really do. I said, hey, just FYI, can I tell you where we might have messed up a little bit? And so she told me, and I said, oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, thanks. I'll take that to heart. I said, hey, let me ask you. I go, but was that the deal killer? She goes like, no, but it was really close, John. And I said, well, did you already sign the deal with your current vendor? She's like, no, but, I called them, but we haven't talked to them live yet. I said, okay. And this is a great story. So I said, hey, let me ask you, from a 1 to a 10, how happy are you with the decision you got? She's like, I don't know, probably an 8. I go, well, why is it not a 10? She goes, well, there's a couple of reasons why. And I said, what's one of them? I go, if you don't mind telling. I go, I know you already awarded it to them, or at least you're going to move over with them. She goes, well, the gentleman's actually pretty old, and I know it's weird. And I could say that, John, because I'm an old lady, so I could say this to you. He's a relatively older gentleman, and our VP said to us, "Hey, are you sure he's going to be able to make a connection with the audience? Because the audience is pretty young. We got some tenured people. We brought in a lot of younger people too." And I said, I go, so I guess let me ask you. Oh, and I said her Leslie, Shirley. His name was Shirley. I said, so Shirley, let me ask you, if you start the training and they're not making the connection, and let's pretend your VP Scott is walking down the hallway towards you, one of the breaks, he's going, I could tell this connection's not happening. And I go, tell me how you're going to feel about this. Because I'm really big on how do you feel about something. And she goes, well, if you put it that way, John, I'm going to run into the ladies' room. I hope he doesn't follow me. And I laughed. I go, do you want to keep running into the ladies' room? She's like, no, not particularly. I go, well, congrats. Maybe you decided to fix this problem. She goes, is it with you? I go, I don't know. Is it? And she goes, all right, how much are you again? And I went, why do you ask? And by the time we got done with that call, she said, send me a revised proposal. And can you fix this one thing we had the issue with you? When I got home, revised it, went back, won that deal. And I know I won that because when she said we went with somebody else, I said, good for you. Because it got her guard down. And once you get your guard down, Brian, then you get to get transparency. But if you go, why? When was the last time anybody has sold a defensive customer? That's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell a defensive customer. And so just act like you don't care if you get the deal or not. That doesn't mean being a jerk, but just have confidence. Go, great, no problem. Thanks for your candor. Really appreciate it. Once the guard goes down, then you go, hey, now that I know we lost, can I ask you a few questions? And boom, that's where you're going to start maybe finding out that one way to get back in the door before they sign.
Yeah. No, I love that. So, the next thing, far as being the best that you can be, do you mind
Yep.
going through that a little bit?
Yeah, I think to be the best that you could be, this is really it's a simple answer. It's not as long answer as all these other ones I just gave. There has to be. I think you have to have something deep inside you that drives you, and it could be ego, it could be money, it could be. This was big with me, which probably a part of ego, defiance. I'll F and show you. Like, don't tell
Yeah.
me I can't do it. Like, I heard an interview with Dustin Hoffman, and
Hmm.
and how he was so passionate and resilient, and all of, like, I will freaking show you, because no one thought he'd be a great actor. Um, but the one thing I have learned on this is this: you have to find something that motivates you, and you hope it's not something that could be bad. It should be good. And I learned a really big lesson when Jack was playing. Gracie's just so simple. I know I tell more stories about Jack. you know, Grace is just so simple. She's kind of, Jack's probably a little bit of this, this head case like his dad, especially competitive wise. But um, Jack was right between his sophomore and junior year. He was getting really good and started to get people to look at him, but he was putting too much pressure on himself. And we went to a counseling session together. And the first one, and after that, then he just goes on his own. And I'll never forget that he said to me, he goes, Dad, you kind of remind me. And by the way, this was a nice compliment, but it's a stretch. He goes, you remind me of Michael Jordan. Because you guys are really wired the same. I mean, you just want to freaking win, man, at all costs. You want to beat somebody by 40, Dad. And if they fall on the floor, you want to step over them. He goes, you play with this anger, Dad. And I did. I don't know if I had anger issues. I don't think I had anger issues, but on that court, it was, dude, you're going to lose. And that's exactly how I felt. And he said, I just play for the love of the game. I just love the game. He goes, you want to just beat people. I just want to
Yeah.
win. And if I win by one, that's good enough for me, Dad. And it really, I loved his outlook on the game. And when I was younger, I was a pretty intense guy. I mean, I'm not even close to that now. Not even in my business. I mean, I've really mellowed out, through therapy. Like, dude, relax. You don't have to freaking win all the time. You have to kill people. And it's just because I didn't like myself. After I started doing stuff like that. That's me being vulnerable, Brian. Is not liking
Yeah.
yourself when you want to beat somebody by 30, you almost humiliate them. Because there was a part of me going, I never want that guy to think he could ever beat me again. But there is a part though where that there's a reputation sometimes that comes with that, Brian. And one of them is, I remember that I've been on deals before where people have said, hey, I heard Costigan is in on this sales training deal to win it, whatever, Google, Oracle or something. And they go, oh, if Costigan's in it, don't even go because he's going to win it. And that doesn't happen all the time, but I heard that through the grapevine that people go, oh, if they find out you're in on it, John, I don't think we don't got a shot because that guy, he's not over the founder of the company, but he knows how to sell. And again, Brian, that's weird for me to say because I'm talking about John the product. I feel like the movie Beaches, where Bette Midler goes, okay, enough about me. What do you think about me? I mean, how narcissistic can we be? But that's why I'm an idiot, man. There's a lot of stuff I really suck at. There's only one thing I even feel kind of good at, and I have a lot of room to improve, and it's sales. Other than that, I suck at a lot of stuff. So it was kind of nice to know that, at least in the industry, people at least respected knowing, hey, that guy is good. And that's why I tell people in my book that I'm writing, hey, does your competition fear you or do you fear them? If they go, shit, he's in on that deal, she's in on that deal, you got to feel good about that, man. But if you go, oh my God, if I go, oh my God, Brian's in on this deal, that sucks that I'm that afraid of Brian. Then
Yeah.
it says, then you better become a professional, get really good, go practice and figure out where your weaknesses are. Because if that's the way you feel about your competition, you want your competition to fear you, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. So
So
based on that, we're seeing just a lot of organizations, and I feel like right now you're in the right place at the right time. You always have been before doing what you're doing, but now more than ever, I'm watching this world of virtual sales, virtual get into doors. Like, I've even heard from a lot of our clients that, hey, the world's changed. And the way that the world has changed is we have to get better because we can't do stop bys or go into plants or go into hospitals. And we can't use that ability to get in the door like we used to because of the pandemic. And I know, what you're famous for, and it blows my mind because I've never seen it live, but I've heard about it many times, is going on stage and not just selling something that's a small package. I mean, it's Oracle, it's ERP systems, it's multi-million-dollar deals, and saying, hey, give me a phone, Give me some numbers. I do not know them, and watch me set meetings in front of thousands of salespeople. And people are like, come on, how can you do that? Can you go through and just share, like, how do you do it? What do you do? Why do people like will set a meeting
Yeah.
with you and your best practices, but they won't with others many times?
Yeah, I'll show you kind of high level really quick how it works, just the process. But the one thing you said, I think it's important, Brian, that one of the first chapters of my book, there's a quote there, and that's one thing I kind of there's kind of a couple things I'm into. I like sunglasses, I like shoes, and I also like quotes. I like making my own. If I say something, I'll be in a class sometimes, Brian, and I'll say something. I'll go. I mean, I'm in front of 200 people. Go, hang on, what did I just say again? Write that down. That's really good. That's going in my book because I'll just say something. I'll see everybody start writing
Mm-hmm.
something down. And go, wait, that must have hit home. Let's. I gotta save that. That was good. So I like quotes
Yeah.
where just that spark hits in a moment you didn't know it. Like, oh, that was cool. Let's say that. And one of the things, I don't think I made this one up, but one of the things I just said is I believe the most successful people I've ever met in my life, and I believe this, the most successful people I've ever met in my life, they know they're going to hit a wall, but they're going to figure out a way around it. I mean, it's just that
Mm-hmm.
simple. You're going to hit a wall. You're going to figure out a way around it. It's like what Lou Holt said. I referenced him earlier. He just said, a lot of times when my assistant coaches would have a problem, I would have them do two things. I'd say, number one, write down the problem. Number two, come up with 3 different ways to solve the problem. He goes, you know what happened? They got smarter, and I got a lot less visits to my office. And I love that because
Yeah.
they hit a wall. Figure out a way before you just keep calling dad or mom every time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the best gifts as a parent you give your kids is let them fail, let them fail, let them figure it out. Well, when you mentioned it's, I've always kind of been in the right place. Look at what 2008, 2009, the recession, where one of the first things that ever gets canceled, Brian, is training. I mean, you when a company starts cutting back, it's one of the top 2 or 3 things off the boom. We're stopping
Yeah.
training. And I remember that I stayed slammed during that period because I figured out a way to go away. Because even other trainers going, hey, it's like misery loves company. Hey, Cos, can you believe? I go, dude, I'm still slammed. Like, how are you still busy? And I said, because when I talk to a customer, I say, listen, I know you want to cut off training. That's fine. If you want to cut off leadership training, you want to cut off some other stuff, that's fine. But the stuff I'm doing, I'm teaching how to get to the door to get to the right person right now. I go, if you cut this program off, this prospecting and cold calling and getting activity and continuing to fill the funnel, if you cut this off right now, this is like canceling your insurance in the emergency room. Because you're sick, right? You're sick. Economy terrible, bada bada bada. You're cutting costs as you should. But okay, what's the sales organization do? They still you still got the best way out of this is to keep selling stuff, which means you got to keep getting in front of
Yeah.
people. So I had such this, maybe that was back to that tenacious, I don't know if it was that anger part, but that competitive going, that's a wall. We're going to figure out a way around it. I think a lot of people, they go, hey, they want to blame stuff, go, this is my reason why I'm not successful. But so with that being said, I think your question was, how do I do it? All I do, Brian, really simple is this, is that I will tell you one part of it. It's about being vulnerable, but I'm vulnerable, but I have a process and I sound professional. So if I look at your average company and I go here, so I come over here, I go here, I'll make it real quick. If this is ABC company, all right, and this is Michelle, and she's the president. The assistant to Michelle is Mary. Now, then we have all the stakeholders, and let's pretend we have this guy right here, and that's Bob. And whatever you want Bob to be, let's say CIO, and we're selling technology. Well, then Bob has, and in this level, let's call Bob T for target. Right, so that's our T. And then anybody underneath Bob, let me move this line right here. Anybody underneath Bob would be like T minus 1, T minus 2. And we all agree that a lot of us get stuck at T minus 2s and 3s and lower levels, right? They can't say yes, but they can definitely say no at this level. All right. So and then over here, you then have the front desk, and we'll call this person Sally. So what I do is, I tell people to listen. The number one thing you want to do is you just don't want to waste time. And how many times have you actually sat there and just calling and calling and calling because you got some name in your CRM system, in Salesforce or whatever you're using, or Oracle, and you're calling and calling and calling. I tell people, how many times have you had this happen where you call and call and call and you finally get a hold of, the guy, Bob, and Bob goes, I'm not the guy. It's there, or it's over here. And now you just wasted 3-4 weeks. trying to get to the guy who wasn't the guy or the lady or whoever it is. In this example, it's a guy. So what I do is I just go, when they pick up the phone, ABC company, this is Sally speaking. I go, hey, Sally, send me up to Michelle's office. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle Smith, your president. Thanks. Now, there's 3 little tips right there. In my class, I go through exactly what I did and why it works. But one of the most powerful words you can use is thanks. When I say thanks, thanks means this conversation is done. Send me up. And that's one of the big reasons why it works. See, if this is control, if I can touch and feel control, this is it right here in my hand. And you could throw this. If I go, hey, Brian, what time is it? I throw this to you, then you catch it and you go, oh, it's whatever, it's 4 o'clock. We throw it back and forth, right? Well, when I go like this, I go, when I do this to Sally, if I go, hey, Sally, can you send me up to Michelle's office? I'm sorry, Michelle Smith, your president. And I end on a question mark. I just threw Michelle control. Now she hasn't. Yeah, I know what she starts to do. She starts to go, what's this regarding? Are they expecting your call? Who are you with? Is this a sales call? They start asking all these questions. But if I go, hey, Michelle, can you please send me up to Michelle's office? I'm sorry, Michelle Smith, your president. Thanks. The thanks, I never gave her control. 90% of the time, they just go, hang on, send me up. And then when I get here, and I know now the audience starts freaking out, going, oh my God, what if she picks up? What if they pick up? And 90%, 99% of the time, Mary picks up or it goes to voicemail. Now it depends. If it's small company, then you might get the owner to pick up. And then the number one thing I teach, I go, just don't sound like a sales rep. And if I were to ask everybody in the audience, write down what every person says when they pick up a phone, they usually go, hi, let's pretend it was, in this case, Mary. Hi, Mary. My name is John Costigan with XYZ Company. We work with organizations such as your yada, 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 yada. They're just waiting for you to take a breath, go click. So I do something completely different. I'm vulnerable. I want to be likable. I want to be transparent. And I just want to be a human. I just want to be a human being. I just want to be a human being. And that's what I do. So I go, Mary, it's John Costigan. How are you? It's my opening line. I want her to go like, what, did I Uber home with this guy? Who is this guy? And I tell the audience simple things. I go, listen, do you all agree that they hear your smile through the phone? They're like, yeah. I go, I'm always smiling when I do it. I'm like, Mary, it's John Costigan. How are you? She's like, good, John. How are you? I go, good. Hey, if you got a second, just need some help. And that's the other tip I'll give you, Brian. I'll give you a couple tips here for your audience. The other one is the number one sales line of all time. That's why I mentioned the story earlier about one of my people. I said, you'd make my day if you called in and just said, I need some help. I do this all the time. I go, the number one sales line of all time is I just need some help. So I go, hey, Mary, if you got a second, I just need some help. I'm trying to see who the best person is to speak to, who's responsible for your IT. And I think it's Bob, but the last thing I wanted to do is call everybody and their brother. And plus I wanted to send an introductory letter at a high level to Michelle from our company to yours saying, hey, we'd like to see if there's a chance for our two companies to talk about doing business together. And I'll send that off to you if I can. If I can send it to you, Mary, I'll whistle to you and I'll get out of your hair. I'll never talk to you again. But I just kind of need some help on that. Is Bob your guy or is it somebody else? She's like, no, Bob's leaving in 6 months. It's amazing the stuff I hear. It's rarely the guy. That's the fun thing when sales reps give me like, that's the guy. Then I call up or that's the lady. And then I call and then you got the assistant to the CEO going, that ain't the guy. That's the guy. So the reps in the audience going, well, that sucked. I just got embarrassed in front of 300 people. And the manager was like going, I love this guy up here on stage because John's just flying blind. He's never even been trained on our products. He's got a brochure in his hand. And then, so then you need to talk to, John, you really got to talk to Julie. I go, great. Get transferred to Julie. Julie, hey, it's John Costigan. Hey, we're in the process of sending an email up to Michelle. Want to see if our two organizations can do business. Hey, but I just had a nice conversation with Mary. I was going to give Bob a screen, but she said all roads lead to you. So if you get a moment, I'll tell you what, I can give you my mobile number. That way, if I see the caller ID coming in from your area code, I'll grab it. At 919-555-1212. Hey, I'll talk to you soon. And right there, just because my cavalier, I'm not like, Julie, John Costigan, IBM, sound like this. That's right. It's like, you're my 13th phone caller. I mean, I just don't sound like that guy. I want to drink with and sit on a plane for 3 hours and you're just hanging out. And that's the part I talk about being human. And I think when you're young and a lot of those kids aren't. So that's kind of the secret to this. And then there's a bunch of terms like, what do you say if Bob really picks up? What's your opening line and all that? And again, I don't say what everybody else says. I'm human. I ask for help. I go, listen, great to talk to you. Listen, the purpose of this call is to see if I can get on your calendar, but I know there wasn't any part of you except you even thinking you're going to get a call from us today. So I know you didn't expect it. I'm going to get out of your hair. I just want to say, number one, really nice to meet you. And number two, if you got 10 minutes to talk on Friday, I'll give you a quick screen. And I might say something like, hey, if there isn't any fit, I won't even send you a Christmas card. I'll never call you again.
Yeah. Just be human,
And,
vulnerable, funny, have fun.
and a lot of times they go, I'm sorry, who are you with again? Because in that message, I'm like, hey, Bob, how are you? And you're like, good, how are you? And I'm like, hey, good. I go, if you got a second, need some help. I was just talking to Michelle's office. And when I say that, I got their attention for another 20 seconds because it's their boss.
Yeah.
And there's a lot
That's
of moving
interesting.
parts about that and how to sound confident, how to sound, for lack of better words, smooth, like you've done it 4 million
Yeah.
times. But I'll tell you,
Yeah.
when you have people who want to bang out 60 and 70 phone calls a day, prospecting, I get it. But I'll tell you one thing, you get good at this, you only need to make but 10. You do 10 of these a day, your phone's calling back. You know what the biggest, when I first started doing this, Brian, even today I get callbacks, even today. You know what the biggest problem was? When I started doing this program 20 years ago, the only product I had was prospecting and cold calling. Now I do sales process, negotiation, closing, time. I mean, I got 20 products we do. But when I first did that, I only had one product, prospecting and cold calling. My client then called me back and said, hey, do you have another class? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, everybody's calling back. We don't know what to do now. He's like, they're all back. What are we saying now? I go, oh, well, that's my second class. And he's like, what is? I go, oh, it's called level 2. I mean, I was pulling it out of my what. Next thing you know, I sat down, wrote a course curriculum, and next thing you know, I'm 6 months on the road with SaaS, rolled out all over the world training them. So yeah, to me, the way the products really generated was, and then after that, then about 6 months later, they're like, hey, do you do an objection handling class? We're getting objections now. I'm like, no problem. That's level 3. And that's how all the levels just grew. Because my client goes, I need this. I'm like, all right. I go research, read a lot of books. I go, like that, don't like that, don't like that. Put it all together and bang, I like this. That's how I did.
Awesome.
That's how I built. I just kept listening to my clients, what they wanted. I go, all right. And I went and go and created it. It's like an artist going, hey, I need you to paint this wall green. All right, no problem. All right, now go paint the downstairs. Now go paint the, all right, great. But it was paint this room, do construction in that room, do electrical downstairs. It was all these different things. I just go, okay, I got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Well, this is a unique model. It's the first time I've actually, I know we've talked over the years, but to actually see it, and I know that our audience is going to really take this and listen to it more. Now, I know that, when you do this, it could take 2 or 3 hours. It could take a day workshop, right? So we're just touching the basics right now. But I think, everyone's going to walk away from this summit going, God, I got to know more about that.
I am so jacked when someone reaches out to buy something, not because of the money. I mean, it's not that expensive. I made it pretty cheap. It's just, I love when someone finally says, I want to get better. Honestly, that's the whole charm. You know why? Because we've all met people in our lives, Brian, all of us, especially probably even family members. We've all met people who want to bitch and moan about their lives, but they do nothing about it. And sometimes I'll tell people, have you ever wanted to help somebody and you wanted to help them more than they wanted to help themselves? And they're the ones with the problem.
Yeah,
Exactly. Right? Well, you go, okay, well, so to me, I have such an insatiable desire to try to get someone to go, I'm going to fix myself. To me, that's the win. That's the win. It's just someone going, I'm better. And that is everything to me. It's way more than the money. I got the money. That's about me. I feel good about myself when I go to bed going, I just did this new program and people are buying it like crazy. I don't go, people buying it like crazy, I make this money. People buying it like crazy means I must have made something good. I care way more about
that's awesome. Well, John, this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing this today. Thank you for sharing, the vulnerability part and just your best practices. I know everyone's going to get a lot of takeaways from this. So just thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm humbled you even reached out, and it's been fun. So I hope this is obviously a success for you as well, Brian. I hope it reflects what you're trying to accomplish, and I couldn't be happier to get the invite. So thanks.